Well, to me, the most important thing is to have a sustainable agriculture. We need to have our own food supply. And so what I hope to demonstrate here in these gardens is what does a backyard sustainable food supply look like? What are the vegetables, what are the grains, the flowers and the herbs, medicinal herbs especially. I want to incorporate all those things into one beautiful environment that can feed us, not only nourish us in our bodies, but nourish our souls. Because our souls are really hungry right now. We've been really isolated from each other, and we're isolated from the earth and all the good things that feed a good life. So even if there wasn't peak oil, even if there wasn't climate change, living close to the earth, deeply connected with the plant kingdom, that's the good life. That was the Jeffersonian ideal. That was the vision of America. So in a way, what I hope to recapture here in my gardens is that gracious, sacred feeling of what it's like to live in holy balance with the planet. What does that look like today? Well, that's what I hope to show in these gardens.
This wonderful, wonderful backyard garden is just so teeming with life. Beautiful flowers and herbs and butterflies and honeybees. It's just wonderful. I am here just loving this. I'm with Scott McGuire, who is the creator of this gorgeous place and many others actually over time, yes?
True, yes. I've made a few gardens in my time.
So, Scott, thank you for joining me.
I'm glad to be here.
So, tell me about your wonderful project. What is this? What you're doing?
Well, this is an experiment in backyard sustainability.
Okay.
What I wanted to do was grow a garden that would approximate some of my family's food needs for a season, because I wanted to show what it would really look like if we were to start feeding ourselves.
A lot. I mean, well,
as much as we need to eat, yeah.
That's a ambitious project.
Well, it is, and I think it's something we're going to really have to pay attention to with peak oil and climate change and economic collapse, all those kinds of things. And even if those things weren't happening, I still think living an agrarian life close to the land is a good life, that original Jeffersonian ideal.
Yes, yes. Well, and it's what humans have been doing for long while.
Yeah, we're really living in the bubble, the blip of time.
That's right. That's right.
That's
That's the
dependence.
peak moment, that the bubble of all this distance. Actually, the machines have let us not have to do it ourselves.
They've granted us the dubious privilege of being separate from the earth.
So, tell me about your notion of this. Is this permaculture? A lot of people have espoused that as a really good model for how to return to the earth. How are you approaching this?
Well, in a way, this is a type of permaculture, although I don't use the term permaculture because that's a very precise trademark term for a very specific plant design system that I really think is wonderful. Although I'm starting to think that permaculture as a system is designed mainly for property owners, because it's a 10-year plan. You want to grow lots of trees and canopy and many layers of plants and catchment systems for water.
Yes.
It's based on really sound natural principles, but you have to have land for a long period of time to enact that vision. And I have a feeling that a sustainable agriculture is going to be necessary even among those of us that are renters. So I wanted to show on a rental property here, what could we really do in our own backyards in one season?
Wow.
Yeah.
This is one season's work?
That's right. We moved into this house. We saw a sign for rent out front this last January. We moved in at New Year's.
It's astounding. We'll take a tour in a few minutes and everybody can see, because the profusion and the size is just staggering to me. I mean, in 5-6 months, good Lord. Did you do anything else in your life?
Well,
you
sure.
Have 2 children.
I have a life.
I mean,
I've got 2 kids
right?
and my own landscaping business too, which is what I'm used to this type of work and things, so it's really familiar to me. It's not that big of a stretch, although it is a lot of work.
Oh, man. So, since it's not quite permaculture, this is about sustainability. Even in property that you can develop in 1 season, 2 seasons, whatever.
Yeah, I firmly believe there's an annual culture component to sustainable agriculture.
Well, sure.
And that's not something that's really addressed in a permaculture context,
Okay.
because they're very concerned with staying on the land for a long period of time, growing trees. And I'm all for growing trees and having a permanent agriculture. But I think a sustainable culture is also going to have annual elements. And so I wanted to show some of those. Intensive gardening, you know, like what John Jevons is doing.
Okay,
Intensive
okay.
backyard gardening with an annual culture. Lots of compost, lots of labor, very intensive. Because we eat a lot of the foods that are grown intensively.
Well, so what kinds of, and we'll see this, but if you're looking at meeting some fair large portion of your family's produce needs.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you have a sense? Well, it's your first season, so you don't know yet.
Yeah.
How much of that you'll be able to meet with what you've got here?
Well, I already know I can meet all of our salad needs. I can grow enough lettuce and onions and spinach and all that sort of thing pretty much year round with the greenhouse.
Really? Year round?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But this year I'm growing a lot of storable things, varieties like certain varieties of carrots and potatoes that can be stored over the winter, onions that can be stored.
Okay.
Some varieties last longer than others in storage. So I'm trying out those storage varieties. I'm also trying out grains this year. I've never grown grains, and me and the kids love oatmeal. So
Yeah.
I'm growing a bed of oatmeal to
Really?
see how much oatmeal can I actually get out of.
Because I expected grains would take a huge amount of space.
Well, they're grown in a huge amount of space, but
Okay.
what I want to find out is how much grain could I grow in, just a standard garden bed.
That's
So I'm trying oats
Okay.
and wheat and amaranth, grain
Nice,
amaranth,
nice.
which I'm familiar with as a plant, but I know my kids aren't familiar with it as a grain, so we're going to try that, see how it works.
Amaranth is a lovely grain, and it doesn't have as wild a taste as quinoa. I think the children might
Okay.
like it because it's got a kind of nutty sweetness to it. So
Okay.
I hope they do, or mix it with some oats or something else that they're familiar with.
And I think that you've hit on it. What we really need to do is experiment with a lot of different kinds of grains. I mean, we can't be a wheat corn diet. It's
Because
disastrous.
they're huge, and of course a lot of people are allergic as well. So experimenting, and also the whole thing of if pests get one grain, you've got something else as a background that kind of, or the weather or whatever it might be.
Well, that's the most important thing, really, is having a diversity.
Yeah.
And also having habitat for the insect kingdom to rebalance themselves. That's very
Habitat
important.
for the insect kingdom. They
Oh,
must
yeah.
be, they've got to be players here, yes?
Well, absolutely. They're on the earth and they're here eating plants and being eaten by birds, and that's part of the big plan. But human beings have really messed up that plan. We've basically waged war, chemical war, on the insect kingdom.
We sure have.
And
We've
that
got
war
the
shows up.
the few insects we like, and then everybody else, right?
Yeah,
That we're
either they're
poisoning to death.
They're
and-
cute or they're a pest,
Yeah.
which is
yeah.
absurd.
Yeah.
So there are no pests in my garden. What I'm doing is establishing insect habitat so they can reestablish balance within their own populations.
Oh, that's interesting. So how do you do that? How do you encourage them to come back?
The simplest way is when you see a so-called pest, cucumber beetle or something, which I have plenty of, I let them be, especially the first year. I just let them go. If they want,
So you're sharing the food with them.
Well, exactly, because they're food for something. There's nothing that isn't food for something else.
Okay.
So what I want to do is allow them to be the food supply for the thing that eats them, because I want the thing that eats them to be present here so that they don't get out of control.
Okay.
So I want to create the habitat where all the so-called beneficial insects and the so-called pest insects can rebalance without being in a war zone from the humans.
That's pretty liberated. Now, obviously, you have to know that some portion of everything you have that you're growing is going to be food for them. You have to share.
Sure, but what it amounts to is maybe 10%, 20% would be more than I ever really see. I don't see that much damage out here. You lose this and that. I think it's an unrealistic expectation to think you're going to get 100% of everything. It's arrogant to want 100% of everything you grow.
Well,
It's
that's
like-
what industrial agriculture, on the other hand, the numbers say there's an enormous amount of waste and loss and inefficiency and so of what
yeah.
comes to us. So
The waste in the pipeline of the industrial food system compared to the waste of even 20-30% of my crop out here, which it never approaches that. I have little bits and pieces of damage, and that's even in the first year. And I know there are exceptions, and there are different things that you can do when you have an infestation. an extreme imbalance of one population of pests. But there are lots of ways to mitigate that now.
Well, I really like your notion of making friends again with the insect kingdom. Boy, that's been a long time war.
Yeah, they're not our enemies. We've been their enemy.
Well, you're talking about restoring a balance between humans, the plant kingdom, the insect kingdom, and probably add the minerals as well because you've got your soil.
Well, that's right.
Balance all the way around.
And that's what's been missing. We buy all of our food, and our food is grown in a toxic soup, and it's unmineralized, demineralized soil. So it's really linking up all these essential factors of health. Even if there wasn't peak oil pending, it's a better way to live to get your own food from your own place.
Well, Scott, let's take a look at what you've got growing here. I want to see what you've got.
Yeah, let me show you where we are.
Okay. Gosh, this is so beautiful.
Well, here are some grains that I'm growing this year.
Okay.
This is some wheat, some spring wheat. I planted this earlier this spring. It's just starting to head up.
So that's that's like a softer wheat? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And it'll grow like way up in here, but I've never grown wheat. I have no idea. I know we have to thresh it and do all kinds of different processes with it. So this is part of the grand experiment.
Oh, good.
Growing wheat, and right next to it are some oats.
Okay.
Because we just love oatmeal.
Okay.
Now this is a hull-less oats because the oats with hulls on them are really hard to shill. So this is what's called hull-less oats, although I've never grown it.
Once again, you'll find out.
We'll find out.
So you've got a whole nice bed
how
of
much
this.
oatmeal is this bed?
Yes.
It's almost a 20-foot bed. I don't know.
Well, next year
How
we'll
much
put you
oatmeal
in
do
with
you-
you and we'll
exactly.
find out that you fed you for 3 months or whatever it was.
Precisely. And also, the reason I'm growing these things is not only to experiment how much it's actually going to grow for us as a food stock, but because I want these seed stocks. If I am going to grow a big field of it, I want to be able to have enough of it. Same with all these other things. Growing these are all dried beans, black beans, turtle beans, soup beans. I've got 4 different varieties of dried beans here because we want to be able to have beans along with all the other different vegetables. So I want to know how many buckets. Is this one 5-gallon white bucket of black beans? Or is it 2 pounds, or how many pounds is going to be there?
So you're going to get and then you keep your measures every year, and you find out, what your yields are, what you can plan to get.
Yep. So it's definitely, it's not only just the food, but it's also to have those seed stocks. To me, one of the foundational piece for a sustainable agriculture is to have seeds of many different types of foods, even if you don't grow them at all right away.
There's your diversity.
You've got to
there's
have
your
the
heritage.
diversity. Well, yeah.
So, to carry us on.
What else we got
What's
here?
this?
Well, this is a grain it's so interesting to me, but I've never grown it. It's called amaranth. It's the grain amaranth. This plant will get massive. It'll get way up in here with this
6
big
feet tall
bushy.
or
Oh,
more?
6, 7,
Wow.
some, yeah.
Wow. Well, amaranth is a grain I happen to love. It's a grain from the Anasazi or the middle Mexican area and so on.
Middle America, yeah. I think that's where it came from.
And the sense I have with amaranth is this stuff is packed with gunch, with nutrition. It really
Wonderful
feels
stuff.
that way compared to oats and
yeah.
wheat even.
Because you can also eat the young leaves as a salad.
Really?
Oh yeah, the
Oh,
young
wow.
shoots of amaranth are delicious in a salad. You're a grazer. To graze. We have more herbs to graze.
Okay.
This is a little patch of millet, and I'm not super fond of millet myself, but
I'll take it any day.
it's a great chicken food. So part of what we grow, we're starting to have chickens. We'll show you the chickens a little later.
I'll join the chickens.
But I also, if the chickens like it, if we like it, I also want to just have a seed stock of it, so I can always grow it out each year and have enough left over to keep the seed of it. Because I think that seeds are going to be valuable not only for what they can grow, but as exchange, as a currency.
A trading currency.
As an actual
Absolutely.
currency, seed varieties. One of the principles of permaculture or sustainable agriculture is seed saving,
Yeah?
but you got to have them to save them.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about seed possession. If people talk about emergency preparedness, for an emergency you're going to have your flashlight and your sleeping bag on.
Right.
If we're in a long emergency, like Kunstler,
Yes,
James
right,
Kunstler
right.
frames it, what are you going to pack for your long emergency? And number one item on my list is seeds. even if you don't ever plan on growing them, even if...
Because you can trade them for the people who will grow them.
Exactly.
I thank
Because
you for
getting
that. That's
seed
good
genetics
wisdom.
into people's pockets, in their possessions, that's a seed in itself to a sustainable agriculture. We have to have the genetics in order to do anything.
Great.
People say, well, how do I get land? How do I get water? It's like, well, those are the second and third most important things. Because if you have land, you need water to do something with it.
Right.
But if you don't have seeds,
you can't go anywhere except drinking the water.
pretty much.
So, what do we got here?
This
Right
here,
here. This is beautiful.
this border here, I call the medicine border. It's a big row of clary sage across the
This is
back.
the purpley
This is the
plant?
clary sage.
Okay,
It's a wonderful
all right.
medicinal herb. And this is one of my favorite plants of all time, Angelica archangelicus.
Woo!
Amazing, beautiful.
Angel plant.
Yeah,
Really?
it's a wonderful plant.
What does it do? What's it for?
The root of the plant, a 2-year-old plant, you grind up the root and use it as a tincture. You make a tincture out of
okay.
it. So I grew these from seed last year and held them over the winter, and I planted them all out in this one
How
big
nice,
big medicine
nice.
bed. We've got some bolting lettuces in here because I knew these plants were going to get so big. I planted lettuces underneath them all because
Oh,
the
okay.
lettuces need the shade.
Yes, yes.
So I used the space to grow some food as well as the medicine. But we're just about to harvest the clary sage, and we'll harvest the angelica later in the fall.
Okay.
But that's one of the things we're going to, on a sustainable level, it's not just about growing food, we're going to have to grow our medicine.
Yes.
So, and having the medicine plants mixed into the food garden is also one of those insect habitat.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's really good for them.
What you got there on the fence?
Let's check it out. Well, here we have the fence that separates us from the neighbors, and it goes all the way around the whole garden. What I decided to do was send some plants up the fence because I think using vertical space is real important. And
Particularly in a backyard, in a
little
small
backyard,
space.
yeah, you don't have much room,
Right.
but you have a
Use it
lot of
all.
room on the vertical. And as it turns out, left over here on the property when we moved in were all these old rolls of fencing.
Great.
So I said, well, I'm going to throw out this fencing. Trellis. So I nailed up all this old junk fencing on here. And what I'm doing is taking these winter squashes and sending them up this fence.
Okay.
So we'll end up having winter squashes hanging off the wall.
Whoa, how nice.
From the greenhouse down, it's all cucumbers for
Okay,
pickles,
okay.
cucumbers, all that stuff. Because cucumbers grow wonderfully
Yes, they will love it up
vertical.
on,
Yeah.
on this.
In front of these, I got a whole bunch of tomatoes. I'm really cramming it tight in here. We're growing a whole bunch of different canning tomatoes. You know, a lot of old-fashioned Italian varieties this year. It's the big plump
the
paste tomatoes.
Pasty tomato,
tomatoes,
yeah. Oh,
'Cause
wonderful.
We're going to make
For
a
tomato
lot of
sauce and tomato paste
sauces
and
and
stuff.
salsas and all that.
Great.
So the challenge is going to be to keep these monster plants off of my tomatoes, and I'm also going to have to stake up the tomatoes because they're going to
Yeah.
get tall
Yeah.
to keep pace with the squash, which will turn into a massive wall of green back in here.
That's going to be
So,
interesting.
Yeah, it's an experiment too. On how close can you cram these things together in a way that's not going to harm their growth.
Okay.
That's the trick.
Well, the greenhouse that you've got right there and the sunflowers. Let's take a look.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So here's a whole bunch of sunflowers that I'm growing. They're just starting to bloom. Aren't they
Isn't that
sweet?
pretty? I
Yeah.
love the pattern, the
Oh yeah.
the double helix
yeah.
in there. Isn't that gorgeous?
We love the sunflowers. The reason I grow so many sunflowers is not only for the insects, not only because they're a good habitat, but we like to sprout the sunflower seeds. And
You
I think
do?
growing seeds for sprout, yeah, because when a seed sprouts, you know,
Oh, you have
little
all the
sprouts,
vitality.
the
is right
enzymes
there.
and all the vitamins that are released. So we eat sprouted sunflower seeds a lot. And I think sprouted seeds are going to be a real key nutritional component. So growing grains and seed grains, not only for the grain as a cereal, but as a sproutable thing too.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I always like to leave, like this big monster here. This grew here by itself.
Really? That's a volunteer?
Yeah, this one out there too. Wherever they show up, I like to let them be.
That's nice.
And they
Nice.
also they get so big. I mean, they're huge. Tons of seeds come out of one plant like this.
Well, they're the ones that say, I'm robust.
That's
enough to
right.
come back a second time.
Exactly. Yeah.
What a cute greenhouse.
The greenhouse. Yeah. This is a small little greenhouse. It's only about 6 by 8. I've grown all these plants that aren't directly sown. All the other plants that are grown here were grown from this greenhouse, from seed.
Okay.
Not only does the greenhouse help us in the springtime to grow plants to get planted out, we plant lettuce and celery and onions and spinach and all kinds of winter greens. Will stay all winter long without any extra heat, just enough to keep it from frosting.
Just the sun amount that you get, or
Yeah.
even on a cloudy day, is keeping.
Not even very well insulated.
Really?
Just to keep the harsh cold off those winter greens.
So you're growing all year.
Ex-
as you
oh
said.
yeah.
So
oh, yeah.
this is what makes
Yeah.
that possible.
Except for right now, the hottest
Well,
time of the
yes,
year.
yes.
When what I'm about to do is put a shade cloth over this, and we're going to turn this into our herb drying shed.
Oh, that's nice.
Hang all the rosemary, all the different herbs, medicinal herbs, culinaries, everything. All the drying of the herbs happens in here between now and 2 months from now, say September, October. And that's when we start sowing more of the winter greens and filling it up with food stuff again for the winter.
So not only are you keeping your garden going all the time, you're keeping your greenhouse going all the time.
It's
to
a
do the whole
multi-purpose
year, right?
structure, yeah, oh
Right.
yeah. And this whole greenhouse is 4 different panels that I can take apart and move somewhere else.
Wow, that's nice. As
Yeah.
a renter, that's important. You know, you don't want to invest a lot in something you can't take with you.
Exactly.
Well, I noticed over there in the corner there were some cute little critters. Can we go visit?
Okay, let's go see them.
These are the cutest. They're small chickens. How many do you have?
They're just chicks now. They haven't started laying. We just got them this year. We got 12 of them. We have 6 reds and 6 arcanas. And this dog kennel was here. We inherited this with the rental, and the landlord offered to take it away. We said, no, we'll use it.
Chickens in it.
So we put chickens in it, yeah. So we incubated them in the house for a couple of weeks, which was horrid. And then we got them out here finally outside, and finally got them in this. Even this is temporary though. We're going to build a coop that has nesting boxes, fence them in a wider run type area.
They probably would want that. We've seen people. I have a friend that has done that with the nesting boxes and also the wheels. So it's a little tractor.
Oh,
and she can sort of move it around to different parts of the yard, and they can eat up the bugs in that part and
you bet.
pasture.
And it fertilizes that spot too.
Yes.
You leave
Yeah,
the
so you
chicken
build your
droppings
soil.
there, you build soil, you get rid of the weeds and bugs. But these chickens, we love fresh eggs, and also I'm growing a lot of food for them. See, that's the other
Sure,
part
you're
of
growing the millet and other
right,
grains
and
for
the
these.
kale and the greens. Back here we have got a big patch of comfrey, which was another great blessing, was here. And chickens, they love comfrey, so we have food growing for them everywhere. But you see, that's another thing about a sustainable agriculture. If you're going to have animals, it's not just about growing food for yourself, it's growing food for your animals.
For them, sure.
And
Sure.
that's something on a backyard scale that we're going to have to take into account eventually.
I can imagine everybody with backyard, the chickens, and to get those eggs to give us good protein.
Good protein
in a small
and
space.
nitrogen. See, one of the peaks that we're going to encounter that's not commonly known is what I call peak nitrogen. Because all of the nitrogen that's used, chemical fertilizers, is
Right,
all made with
right.
natural gas. We need to get back to legumes, clovers, and the family that fixes nitrogen in plant roots, and back to animal manures. Because those two are the sources of nitrogen outside of natural gas we're going to need.
Which reminds me, I saw a big patch of clover.
Oh yes,
You wanna show
clover
me
too.
what
Yeah,
you're doing
yeah.
there?
Oh yeah. These are 3 of the original fruit trees that were here with the farmhouse. 2 apples and a cherry tree. We already harvested all the cherries. They were delicious. But when we moved in here, these trees were completely overgrown. They hadn't been pruned in years. But they're still good fruit trees. They're still healthy and all. So I'm starting a little revitalization project to revitalize the trees. I pruned them all really well this winter and skimmed out all the weeds and junk. I'm growing at the base of the root zone, I'm growing this crimson clover. This is an annual clover that doesn't send in any invasive runners, but it fixes nitrogen, and it's a wonderful clover. Not only is it going to help these trees to be stronger, more vital trees, but I'm also going to save the seed from the crimson clover when it grows up, because I want to be able to have a stash of crimson clover seed for any other soil revitalizing.
Nitrogen,
Fixes nitrogen,
fixing,
exactly.
like you said before.
I want to personally start to gain a whole collection of different legumes, different nitrogen fixing plants, so that I have a real wide palette of genetics to revitalize soil with. That's my goal.
I have this picture of you with your palette is a good word. It's like your suitcase or your box with all your little seeds in it. So just, you're ready to go anywhere you have to transplant yourself.
Seed storage systems are in fact one of the key important pieces, because seeds can go bad. A lot of seeds don't have viability for very many years. So we got to store seeds very carefully so that they'll retain their vitality so that you can grow them out in a few years. A lot of seeds you can't grow after a few years. They just won't sprout as well.
Great.
And how you store seeds is real important to how long they'll last.
Great. Thank you. This is Peak Moment. I'm Janaea Donaldson. You're watching Community Responses to a Changing Energy Future, and I'm here with Scott McGuire, looking at seeds for the long term, gardens for the long term. Thanks for joining us.